So another area we get a lot of questions about is VAT, and at which point I usually pass the phone over to Hannah, as it can be a little complicated. So Hannah, can you give us some best practices around recording VAT?
Yep, sure. So VAT can be daunting to many people we speak to, not just to Jane. So if your council has a complicated VAT position, then of course we'd recommend that you either get advice from HMRC or a VAT specialist. But generally, your council will either be VAT registered and therefore requiring to submit VAT returns, or they won't be VAT registered but able to claim VAT back using Form 126. Councillors who are VAT registered will be so because they'll have other regular, consistent sources of income besides the precept, such as hiring out the hall, running a car park, for example. VAT returns are generally required to be submitted on a quarterly basis, but may also be done monthly as well sometimes. If your council is over the VAT threshold, which is currently £85,000, you would be required to use Making Tax Digital, and that means that you must submit your returns online via account software. The idea behind that is that it should streamline the process, making returns easier to do and more accurate. Also, if you are under the threshold, you can still choose to use Making Tax Digital, so you can log on with your Government Gateway ID on the HMRC website and choose to do so that you can also use MTD. Councils that are not VAT registered tend to be the smaller councils, or those councils that do not have much significant income besides their precept, and in that case they will be claiming VAT back, as I said, using Form 126 on the HMRC website. So you log on with your Government Gateway ID, put all your details in, and then upload the information, the supporting documents about those invoices that you're claiming the VAT back for. There's no specific timing for claims when you're using Form 126 and claiming the VAT back, like there is with the VAT returns, where it's quite specific with the return dates and the date that you need to submit it by. But with Form 126, you must be claiming for complete calendar months, and if the claim is for less than £100, then it would need to be done for the entire year. You can also go back and do claims up to 3 years. So if you have recently inherited a new council where VAT's not been claimed for a while, you could go back and claim some VAT relating to prior years as well. I'd recommend, if you can, to do it at least annually, and if possible do it up to the 31st of March, because that will keep things nice and clear and neat. Whatever your VAT position, it's really important to record VAT separately. And that goes back to my earlier point about the structure of your cash book, ensuring that you're recording VAT elements in there separately, so that you're easily able to collate your returns and your claims. And remember that you can only claim VAT back if the invoice that you have from the supplier clearly shows the amount or the percentage of the VAT, and also the VAT number of the supplier. So ensure you have that in your paper trail to allow you to claim the VAT back. If it is a long or onerous task to complete your VAT returns or VAT claims, then I would certainly say this is something that you could look at streamlining and improving upon.
Yeah, so Hannah's just mentioned about inheriting a system or a spreadsheet, and Jane mentioned at the beginning there isn't often a handover that comes with that at times, and I definitely say that this is where claiming the VAT back can get a little more complicated. So it's not unusual for any of us to speak to a new clerk coming in who may have 2 to 3 years worth of VAT claims to work through and to then process. I know there's lots of you though that do keep the council's VAT claims up to date and that you manage via Excel. But the one thing that I repeatedly do hear again and again is that it's not difficult, but it's really, really tedious. So claiming VAT back in the way that Hannah's just discussed, for those of you that aren't VAT registered, does take a lot of time, and it involves a very manual process, so often locating and duplicating the data so that you end up with something that you can use for your Form 126 schedule. When you're using Scribe, your Form 126 is produced automatically. So all you have to do is apply a date range. Hannah's already recommended keeping that in line with year end to keep it neat, but if you need to make, a quarterly claim because you've spent a lot and you've got more VAT to claim back, you can do that as well. So the Form 126 that Scribe generates is an acceptable format for HMRC. You'll be able to simply print it out or download a copy directly from the software so that it's ready to be submitted. So we spoke a little while ago about setting up cost centres and codes and when you first make a start with Scribe, but something else that you can do to get in sort of right away is set up a list of regular suppliers. So at this point, you can then add in addresses, VAT registration details, and you'll be picking up your VAT spend as you go along, because every time you key a receipt or a payment into Scribe, you'll be selecting the VAT that's applicable. So Scribe is constantly working around sort of in the background, keeping your Form 126 up to date, and it's ready to go just as soon as you give it a date range to work with. So there's no data that you need to extract, and there's no copying or pasting. So for the VAT registered councils amongst you, you'll be pleased to know that Scribe is HMRC approved and comes with a Making Tax Digital integration. You can also run the VAT 100 as well. This is based more on a quarterly date range, so you'll be able to select that specifically within the software. And again, it will produce it in the correct format for HMRC. So once you do get into Making Tax Digital territory, I know it's quite a daunting thing for a lot of people, but we're on hand to help you with that. So I'm sure I speak for Hannah and Jane when I say that we'll be on hand to kind of help you and guide you through that as well. So if you're not sure what you should be doing or how you should be doing it, we'll be happy to show you and to get you up and running, especially with that first electronic claim as well. So we know that it's an isolating role and that you may not have somebody that you can ask. So I think actually the forms, and it's more about having the support and someone to ask about that than just having it produce those forms for you, and to get a bit of support. And Hannah's particularly great with that. So.